everyone, welcome to this episode of Context is King. I'm Rebecca Brayton, and with me as always is WatchMojo founder and CEO Ashkan Karbasfrooshan to discuss what is the myth of the entrepreneur. Not just a Jeopardy answer, but a question.
What is the myth of the entrepreneur? The myth of the entrepreneur is that there is this crazy disparity between, as a company grows and evolves, how critical and how important the entrepreneur founder, if he or she is still the CEO, is to the operation versus their actual pertinence and relevance, right? False modesty aside, if in 2006 I wasn't around, okay, WatchMojo as it is was not going to be around. Sure, figuring out fair use, yada, yada. There's certain things that, okay, fine. But today, this isn't false modesty. I am probably, I don't have a job. I don't purposely, that's like.
Is that why we're doing this?
Partly. There's other reasons to it. But possibly. I am probably the 18th, easiest person or hardest person to replace, right? Most critical people. If you're not around.
I'm taking note of that.
No, but if you're not around, the day-to-day takes a bigger hit. If Christine, Raph, I could go on and name easily 5, maybe even 10 people.
I'm staying out of this so hard.
This is not a test for you to be like, no, dear leader. No, but that's my point. But outside, even when I talk to my family and friends who know, Ash has recruited a great team. People know, Ash doesn't need to be there. Ash is on Twitter or LinkedIn or doing this. There's this kind of obviously, let's say if Ash, if you're not there, what happens? I'm like, nothing. It would take them days before they realize. So okay, I may be exaggerating. And that's what I feel the most successful companies, the most successful entrepreneurs have this great team. But because the company has more and more success, it's kind of you want access to the person who started it because you feel there's this kind of gatekeeper dynamic where it's give us access to this person that's should be hiding, but they're out there. But so that's the myth of the entrepreneur, that it's kind of this paradox that as the business actually becomes more successful, the best organizations, the entrepreneur is kind of he could pull a disappearing act and you wouldn't necessarily notice that.
Why do you also call this the perception gap?
The perception gap, yeah. So the perception gap, so one is that, just within an organization, that the entrepreneur, if he or she does his job right, could kind of be disappearing act nobody should notice. The perception gap is the difference between that, the value, not the value. I would say, again, I want to be careful with who I choose. So I want to talk about much more high-profile people, not to put them down, but this applies to me too, but I consider myself unknown compared to these people. Take 2 or 3 of our bigger comparable companies in our peer group. Take Vice and take BuzzFeed. Even Vice, when you think of the challenges that they've had, Shane Smith has kind of moved to the executive chairman role. They have a CEO, Jonah Peretti at BuzzFeed. I don't mean this as a knock internally. I'm talking more about the external, how big of a shadow they project. Shane Smith, there was a period where he could walk on water. Here's a guy who's made content sexy. He's gotten Rupert Murdoch to invest. He's gotten Disney to invest. He's gotten these private equity firms to give him hundreds of millions of dollars at $5 billion valuations, which in hindsight today you could make no sense. But if you give them enough time and runway, maybe they will make sense. Who knows? But Shane Smith externally was viewed like that, wow, this guy could, part the seas and all that. But internally, okay, there's a lot of people and employees who respect what he built, but they'll roll their eyes because they'll know that, hey, internally, there's so many other people that
he's a figurehead.
Yeah, he's a figurehead, right? So same thing with Jonah at BuzzFeed. People outside are always going to be oh my God, Jonah, he made social a business and did this and that. Internally, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are no, we disagree with that. And they kind of hold their feet to the fire a lot more. And I'm the same way, right? I don't doubt that there's probably people here who really respect me. There's people here who scratch their heads going I don't understand how Ash sees the world. I disagree with him and all that. But externally, there's a lot of people that seem to think oh my God, Ash can do no wrong, right? And it's the same thing at pretty much every company, that there's just this bigger and bigger disparity between how external people, now don't get me wrong, there's also the Kara Swishers of the world who will bash you external, but that's their job as news journalists at news companies. But ultimately, that's it. That at the same time, internally, an entrepreneur's criticalness to the operation should go minimized, whereas over time, people on the outside kind of revere you more and more, even though you really are less and less critical to the operation.
Well, isn't that the case for most managers? Or if you become so good at something, then you start to manage it and don't actually do the thing anymore?
Well, absolutely, and that was the idea, that like if you are indispensable, then you created a job for yourself. You didn't actually create like this business, that a going concern that goes away from you. But it's not necessarily true for everybody. A lot of folks could criticize Tim Cook at Apple, saying, oh, he doesn't have the same vision and creativity as Steve Jobs, and who the hell will have that? You know, but Tim Cook has like tripled the value. I'm not saying value maximization is the only thing that matters. It's not at all. I've always said that for 20 years in my career. But Tim Cook has done an enormously successful, amazing track record. Tim Cook was always probably, if Tim Cook disappeared, it would have affected Apple probably as differently than Steve Jobs' tragic passing. So I feel that actually with a lot of executives, they are a little bit more critical. Now that doesn't mean, we've covered it respectfully, that everybody is replaceable. But I think that most managers are actually, if they disappear, while you could replace and even find room for improvement, I think their hit is a bit more profound. Whereas with the entrepreneur, it's both that like they're kind of, you know, they could be replaced far easier, but then they are put on this pedestal. So there's kind of this distorted reality field.
Right. All right. Well, what do you guys think? Has Ash outlived his usefulness at WatchMojo? I'm kidding. I'm kidding, but let us know what you think in the comments, and we'll see you next time. I'm still getting fired.
You're getting a promotion. No, I'm kidding.